The Portland Trail Blazers have been one of the most atrocious defensive NBA teams in the last 20 years. Welcome to Rip City Rundown, and in this video I'm going to explain why the Portland Trail Blazers could actually be a solid defensive team this season. For some reference, there are 30 NBA teams, and in the last 20 seasons the Blazers have had a top 10 defense only twice. You heard me, twice. 1, 2. Absolutely despicable. Not to mention that those 2 seasons that we were a top 10 defense, we were, well, barely a top 10 defense, sneaking into the top 10. In 7 of the last 20 seasons, the Blazers' defense have ranked in the 10 to 20 range, which is considered average, and in an astonishing 11 out of the last 20 seasons, the Blazers have had a defensive rating 20th or higher. In other words, over half of the seasons in the last 20 years, the Blazers have been one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Why is this? The Blazers have obviously been a decently successful team, making it to the playoffs 12 of the last 20 seasons. Heck, since the Dame era, the Blazers have only missed the playoffs twice. Before I talk about why this season is bright when it comes to defense, let's look at the main problem the Blazers' defense has dealt with over the years. Well, the biggest problem with Portland's defense these recent years attributes to the quantity of undersized guards Portland acquired. Portland definitely likes small guys who can shoot, and although it's a blessing, it's also a curse. Other than our tanking season last year, Damian Lillard has led Portland to a top 10 offense 6 out of the 9 years he has been with Portland. Dame being an elite scorer but only being 6'2" should, send a message to our organization that prioritizing defense might be a beneficial tactic in order to win an NBA championship. Unfortunately, our organization, myself included, was a deer in headlights when watching CJ McCollum's breakout season. In 2016, CJ McCollum broke out from a bench player to an elite scorer in the starting lineup. CJ McCollum was/is an insanely talented player, but unfortunately, he was not a good fit for our team. When you already have Damian Lillard, the second best player on your team should be an elite defensive player, but that second best player being another 6'2" guard isn't going to solve the issue. Unfortunately, our organization found this out 5 years too late. We thought Dame and CJ would mimic the Steph and Klay duo, except the only problem with that postulation is that Klay is/was a 6'7" elite shooting guard that could defend. After many failed attempts of building an adequate defense, the Blazers organization took one more swing at it, and boy was it an embarrassing one. Around 2 seasons ago, the Blazers traded Gary Trent for Norman Powell, who ended up being the starting 3 at a height of only 6'5". Sure, the Blazers also traded for 6'7" Robert Covington to prioritize defense, but the Blazers literally made the same mistake twice by picking up another small guard. At this point of time, 3 out of the 5 Blazers starters were 6'5" or less, and 6'7" is not big by any means for a power forward. At this point, have the starters cherry pick and let Nurk go 1-on-5 on defense, because that is basically what Nurk was asked to do. You would have thought Portland would acquire solid defensive pieces to even things out, right? Wrong. The Blazers had Enes Kanter, one of the worst defenders in the league, Carmelo Anthony, also one of the worst defenders in the league, along with Simons and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who are just undersized. Remember, this was all 2 seasons ago, after the Blazers' disappointing loss to Denver, all because of their crappy defense. You would have thought it was time for another change, right? Well, you are wrong once again. We fired Terry Stotts and hired Chauncey Billups, a so-called defensive-minded coach, and magically think everything is going to be fixed. We get a new coach, but we keep CJ, Norm, and Rocco in the lineup, and what happens next year? The same thing. We get absolutely ran out the gym. Although we were injured heavily last season and tanked in the second half of the season, the Blazers were the worst, no, not one of the worst, the worst defensive team last year, which is devastating given us fans were told changes would be made after that Denver loss. However, this year is a different year. Do I think the Blazers will be a top 10 defense? No, but I'm predicting us to be a solid defensive team given the changes we endured. Instead of defensive presences of Enes Kanter and 37-year-old Carmelo Anthony and other undersized guards, we have defensive monsters in Josh Hart and Gary Payton II and other young athletic aspects. Looking at bballindex.com, which gives some stats, we see Gary Payton II ranks in the 81st percentile in post defense, 99.6 percentile in passing lane defense, meaning he creates a lot of turnovers, 97.6 percentile in pickpocket rate, and 90.1 percentile in on-ball defense. Josh Hart is also slept on when it comes to his defense. Hart ranks in the 99 percentile for defensive versatility and in the 95th percentile in defensive rebounding impact. Overall, Josh Hart ranks in the 90th percentile for defensive impact among guards, and Gary Payton ranks in the 99.2nd percentile among guards, which are scarily good numbers. The defense off the bench for Portland this season is promising, but what about the starters? Initially, you look at Dame, Ant, and Little, and you are petrified. Little is 6'5", Ant is 6'3", and Dame is 6'2", which is nearly identical heights to the Norm, CJ, Dame trio. However, it is worth mentioning that the bench was Portland's biggest problem when it came to defense these recent years, and not so much the starting lineup. However, this undersized trio is still slightly concerning. However, it is worth mentioning that Anthony Simons is way more athletic and just bigger than CJ, so it's a massive upgrade in that regard on the defensive end. Simons has an insane 6'9" wingspan compared to CJ McCollum, who only had a 6'6" wingspan. I think wingspan is a very underrated aspect to look at when comparing defensive ability on some of these NBA players, and that sole reason being it just shows how well you can contest shots. Simons is also way quicker than CJ given his youth and gifted athleticism. Although Nasir Little and Norman Powell are the same height, Nasir has a 7'2" wingspan and weighs more than Norm. Overall, if we sum up the defensive stats of our starters, Lillard and Simons both rank below the 20th percentile for defensive impact, which is bad. But then again, remember, their role on the team is to score the basketball. Nasir Little ranks in the 61st percentile for defensive impact compared to all the wings in the NBA, which is solid, especially given the fact that he's expected to improve immensely this season. Jeremy Grant is in the 83rd percentile for defensive impact among wings, and that's part of the reason why the Blazers pushed to trade for him. And for all the Nurk haters out there, Nurk ranks in the 87th percentile for defensive impact among bigs in the league. Overall, that is 3 out of the 5 starters being good to great at defense. Mix that with our defensive upgrades off the bench, and on paper, the Blazers should not be a bad defensive team by any means. A scary thing is that we are just a new team. Defensive communication takes time to master, but I ask for our fanbase to give our team a chance, given 1, they are a new team, and 2, we have a difficult schedule to initially start up the year. Overall, that is why I think the Blazers are going to be a solid defensive team this season. That is going to do it for this video, guys. Go comment where you think the Blazers will rank defensively this year. Do you think we'll rank in the 10 to 15 range, the 15 to 20 range? Do you think the Blazers will suck and be a 20th rated defense or higher? Or do you think the Blazers will shock everyone and be a top 10 defense next season? Go comment what you think and make sure to like and subscribe for more Blazers content, and I will see you guys in the next one.